Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us um, tonight. I'm just seeing Isabelle is here with us. Tonight, we are looking at IVF, nutrition for IVF preparation. We're joined by Isabelle, who will be talking us through. Hi, Isabelle. How are you?
Hang on. Right. Can you see and hear me?
I can, yes.
Perfect.
How are you doing? Are you okay?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm very well.
Good.
Hope you can, yeah, I can see, as long as we can hear and see each other, we're fine. How are
Yeah.
you,
I'm
Sophie?
good, thank you. Yeah, I will
Good.
share the screen again. We were having trouble with the pins, weren't we? So I'll just share the screen again and hopefully everyone can see and hear you at least. You're the more important one here. So we'll do that. I think as has been mentioned already in the chat, we will be answering questions as we go through. If anyone
Yeah.
has questions linked to anything Isabel's covering off, though generally you cover everything. And then at the end, we've got some time for a few other Q&As if needed. So I'll keep an eye on the chat here if people are asking questions and we'll ask as we go. So firstly, we will intro you. Here you are as well, if you
Hello.
want about you.
Um, okay, so I'm a nutritionist and I have specialized in fertility for the last 20 years or so. And I've worked very closely with Zita for most of those, and focus on both male and female fertility, natural conception, trying naturally, but certainly very much also supporting couples, women, but also couples going through IVF, and looking at basically supporting via nutrition and lifestyle, but without making it draconian or more stressful than the whole situation actually is, because there's lots of things you can do to support fertility. And with IVF, actually, nutritional requirements are somewhat increased, particularly for the female. So there's a lots of things you can do to support it, but in a useful and sort of friendly way rather than a difficult way, because there's a lot of stress already around all this.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, like you say, it's a stressful time already.
It
So
is.
yeah, trying to, like you say, demystify that slightly. Um, so firstly, just looking at the foundations of fertility nutrition here. Obviously, a fertility diet is something that you look at. So would you be explaining a little bit more?
Yeah. So the basics, I mean, the diet that actually has had a lot of study and that has been recommended quite particularly, if you like, from a fertility perspective, is a higher protein, lower carb, Mediterranean style diet. Now, the Mediterranean diet, as probably everybody knows, has been studied a lot with longevity and health and sort of lower risks of certain cancers and heart disease and diabetes, lower inflammation. But actually, you can take the ethics, if you like, of a Mediterranean diet for any cuisine of the world. And I'm very conscious of that when I speak to people who, follow different sort of diets culturally. But there's a lot you can do. And essentially, with the Mediterranean diet, it is lower in processed foods. That's really important. A lot of our modern foods are so full of chemicals and sort of fake foods, if you're, or fake nutrients that our bodies don't always recognize. So lower in processed foods, lower in saturated fat, and saturated fat is found essentially in sort of red meat and high fat dairy, essentially, and it's rich in sort of fruit and vegetables. It's very colourful, nuts and seeds, pulses. Olive oil is actually quite key. Olive oil is great from a fertility perspective, and of course, some good lean proteins. And from a fertility perspective, as I mentioned a bit earlier on, protein is really important. So protein provides the building blocks for growth. And I think that we've got a slide for protein, which I will talk about in a bit. But essentially, a higher protein, because protein provides the building blocks for growth. Lower carb, because our modern diets tend to be potentially, not for everybody, but potentially they can be very, very carb based. It's very easy to have a bowl of cereal or, toast and jam for breakfast and then a sort of sandwich and a packet of crisps for lunch and a bowl of pasta in the evening. Not unusual for people to follow that kind of a diet. And that, from a fertility perspective, in my opinion, is not high enough in protein. And certainly not from an IVF perspective, because protein is what our eggs and our sperm are made of. And obviously for IVF, your protein requirements are higher because you're trying to create more eggs, but also carbohydrates turn into sugar. And actually, neither eggs nor sperm mature very well in a glucose-filled environment. So a high carb diet sort of equals a high sugar diet, which is not the best environment for the optimizing sort of the maturation of eggs and sperm, but also it can affect overall hormone balance. So, and it's really important to keep our hormones balanced in order to be able to ovulate, produce sperm, produce eggs, but not just that. Thyroid function, which is important for reproduction, you know, to support adrenal, which are our stress glands. So that is really important. So a higher protein, lower carb, and the Mediterranean really, I'm talking about the colourful, the antioxidants come into this as well. So antioxidants are found in colourful foods, which I think we're going to discuss later on as well.
Yeah, thank you. So here is your protein slide.
So, okay, I need to have a look at it. So protein essentially provides the building blocks of growth. Anything that grows requires protein. So that is our starting point. And we're looking at, yes, so the most sort of, the most obvious protein sources are meat, fish, eggs, dairy, nuts and seeds, pulses and legumes. So we have there's a lots of people talking about protein now. A lot of people are, you know, trying to get in tons of protein because they're going to the gym, etc. Actually, very high protein diets aren't particularly necessary from a normal perspective. But with IVF, your ovaries are at the gym. Okay. With IVF, okay, ideally, you know, I mean, some people have a lower follicle count, but you know, the aim is to ovulate with more than one egg, and in some cases, people can ovulate with eggs into, you know, into the 20s. So if it is the medication's job to stimulate the hormone, to stimulate the ovaries to mature as many present follicles as possible, that's the medication's job, but it's your job to feed them. So your protein requirements go up quite significantly, and we can talk about that. I often talk about that in my consultations, and I'm very happy to answer questions about that. But certainly you don't want to go overboard and eat 5 steaks a day, to be fair. So you have to choose your proteins, and some lean meat, you know, fish and stuff, but vegetarian protein, preferably not over processed stuff, but stuff that is, you know, in its real form is really important. So protein not only provides the building blocks for growth, it also supports hormone balance, but protein reduces the speed at which sugar enters the bloodstream. And so it keeps your blood sugar levels more stable, which in turn has a knock-on effect onto overall hormone balance. And that includes estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, thyroid hormones, adrenal hormones. So the starting point for hormone balance is balancing your blood sugar levels, which we will talk about later on as well. But in order to be able to do that, protein plays a really big key. But yes, as we talked, as I mentioned a bit earlier on, moderation. It's really important to have enough protein, but it depends the type of protein, and a very high animal protein diet actually is not recommended from a fertility perspective, neither for the man or for the woman. So it's important to get other types of protein in that.
Okay, that leads in nicely actually to a question someone's just asked. So they've been fasting for a while and eating a high protein diet.
Yeah.
However, they're hearing that fasting may not be good for fertility.
Um, I'm making this. Are you female? I'm assuming you're female. And this is a woman we're talking to, and not a man. From a fertility perspective, there. I mean, it's really dependent on how your body is functioning, because and depending what kind of fasting you're doing, intermittent fasting, sorry, have it can be beneficial. It is not studied in pregnancy. No type of fasting is recommended in pregnancy, so we need to take that into consideration. But from an IVF perspective, I wouldn't go down the fasting route. One of the main reasons being is particularly if you're eating, say, 2 meals a day, I don't think you can fit the amount of protein that would be relevant for an IVF cycle, if you like, in 2 meals, because you'd be eating too much protein at a time, which is very difficult for your body to digest and break down. And so it's not giving you the best. So realistically, if you're trying naturally, some people find, and not everybody gets on with fasting. So it's very difficult to know exactly where you're coming from. But if you are planning an IVF cycle, I tend to recommend not to do fasting.
Okay, great. And then another question here, which we may cover later anyway, is I have low AMH. Will a high protein diet contribute to promoting my egg quality?
Low AMH is not necessarily linked with poor egg quality, by the way. Seems to be a bit of a myth, but yes. I mean, actually, interestingly enough, so AMH can go up and down. Um, Certainly, I would make sure if you haven't already checked your vitamin D levels, I would certainly check those because sometimes low vitamin D levels can be linked with lower AMH. But yes, increasing your protein may help, definitely. I mean, I think it's really important. And as I say, it's not being, Jim Bunny silly on this. It's not going, I mean, I actually do sometimes recommend 100 grams of protein a day for women going through IVF if they have a high follicle count. With a lower follicle count, that probably would be too much, in all honesty. So it's really very much, how much protein works for you, depending on what you're doing. But try to include, really the easiest thing to do is try and remember to have protein every time you eat, and try not to have a bigger carb portion than a protein portion on your plate. Your plate should really be a third full, or half full, if you like, of non-starchy veg, quarter full of protein and a quarter full of carb. But then we can add to that if we're needing to increase the protein for IVF.
Okay, lovely, thank you. And then just again on the protein fit, if you're vegetarian or vegan, how much
Yeah.
protein in terms of nuts and seeds in grams per day or
I mean,
anything?
the thing is, you need, in a handful of nuts, actually, honestly, probably doesn't give you much more than, depending on what the nuts they are and how many you fit in your hand, potentially even, 6 to 8 grams of protein. I mean, a cup of lentils will give you about 16 grams of protein, maybe a bit more. It's quite hard to eat a cup of lentils in a sitting, by the way. It's quite a lot. So it is harder. It is harder to get protein in certainly from a vegan diet. From a vegetarian diet, obviously eggs are great protein sources, and particularly if you can only probably eat so many eggs in a day, but you can add egg whites to it. In the protein is more or less in the white, and there's some very like high protein yogurts, high protein, lower fat cheeses and things out there. So it is easier for vegetarian. It is more of a challenge from a vegan perspective, I'm not going to lie. And then there are the protein powders, and most of the vegan ones are pea based, which in itself is nothing wrong with it. But back in the 50s, they studied peas as contraceptives. Peas contain a compound called M-xylohydroquinone that has contraceptive properties. Actually, it was a rubbish contraceptive, to be fair. And they maybe a 50% success rate. So they left the studies back in the 60s. But what we don't know is the aim of a protein powder is to put a lot into a small amount. What if it's full of M-xylohydroquinone? Is that great from a fertility perspective when you're potentially paying a lot of money for an IVF cycle? So,
Yeah.
do you see what I mean? So I think anyway, I'm very happy to discuss further for anybody who wants to discuss it at some point.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of protein powder questions which you get asked a lot, don't you? Is it
I
if it's a
do.
supplement with protein powder, and someone else has asked if they can affect sperm quality as her partner has a chocolate.
Again, it's dependent on, I mean, I see a lot of people who are on vegan protein powders, both men and women. And the vegan ones tend to be, as I say, either pea and or soya based. And you've got the same issue with soya, with the estrogenic compounds, with the fact that it's not thought to be great from a fertility perspective. So I tend to say, when you're going for something like IVF, it's very focused. You have one chance a cycle, really, to get those eggs fertilized, etc. So I personally would say, just to be on the safe side, I can't give you any evidence, but to be on the safe side, avoid soy and pea protein powders potentially, maybe. So from a vegan perspective, you could do things like hemp, although hemp isn't great in high quantities for sperm actually, but pumpkin seed powders. I mean, there are ways of doing it. And otherwise there's whey protein, or there's collagen peptides if you're not vegetarian or vegan. I mean, there are ways of doing it. But yeah, I think protein powder has its place. Not everybody gets on with it. Some people find that they try it and they feel terrible. So, there are ways of doing it, and it's not a one size fits all, but so it's people get stressed about it. I do understand that. So it's something that it's worth discussing at some, if people do need to discuss it further, we can discuss it further at some point.
Okay,
Or,
thank you.
sort of email or something like that.
And just on that slightly, just with your mention of soy, is it best
Yeah.
to avoid things like tofu?
No, I tend to say some tofu is fine. It's a bit like anything, and it's very difficult. Again, that there are, if you've been following a sort of potentially a Japanese or a Chinese diet, which is very high in soy products generally. But from a Western perspective, it's not necessarily in our DNA to do that. And a lot of you've got to be careful with some of the soy products about the GMO, about how they're produced, and soy protein isolate, which can be found in many sort of fake proteins, if you like. Not so happy about that, because if you're having tofu, which is the whole thing, it's bean curd, so it's the whole product. And particularly if you go for things like miso and tempeh, which are fermented, that's even better. But moderation, I wouldn't be eating soy every day, and I wouldn't be having, so a lot of people who maybe are a bit sensitive to dairy or something sort of are having a soya yogurt every day and a soya latte and then tofu in the evening. And I'm just, it's one of those things that it's a question mark. And I think that it's worth looking at these things and just taking note, maybe.
Okay. And then just final question, we've had a couple again just on the protein side, is just if you've got a low antfollicle count, how much, is there a certain amount you should have? I know you said that
I mean, it's look, as a general rule, and depending on your activity levels and how tall or small you are or what sort of build you are, a sort of roughly for a woman, it's recommended that you have something like 45 to 50 grams of protein a day. In pregnancy, you're looking at about 60 grams of protein a day. For IVF, I would start at 70.
Brilliant.
70 to 100, depending on where you're at. So if you can make it up to about 70, if you had a lower follicle count and you might produce 3, 4, 5 eggs, something like that, you'd be fine with 70 grams of protein a day, which if you break it down into sort of 3 meals and maybe a snack, it's not so hard to do. It's not so hard to do, but don't do it all at once. I saw a client once many years ago who I had to talk to. She said, I don't know what you've done. I feel terrible. And, and anyway, it turns out that she was having for breakfast 2 eggs, 20 grams of protein powder, porridge with protein yogurt. She was having something like 50 grams of or 60 grams of protein for breakfast. And then she felt horrific for the rest of the day. And I said, well, why are you doing this? She said, oh, I just thought it was, at least I get it out of the way. So don't do that. Stagger it, smaller amounts so that your body can digest it and process it. You'll feel better for it. There's no, oh, I must have X in this meal and Y in that meal. Just, be gentle with yourselves. You'll feel better for it.
Brilliant. Thank you. Lots of protein questions there. So on to blood sugar balance.
So blood sugar, so all our hormones work in connection with each other. Stress hormones, sex hormones, thyroid hormones, they all work synergistically. And the more balanced the hormonal system, the more efficiently the body works. And the more efficiently the body works, the better quality. And that includes our mood, our sleep, our skin, our anxiety levels, all of that kind of thing, but also the way our hormones function. So, and that includes our adrenals, our thyroid, but our sex hormones as well. So all our hormones, I mean, life gets in the way, but where we have control, and from a nutritional perspective, we do, the starting point to help support a balanced hormonal system is by balancing your blood sugar levels. That's the starting point. Because if you don't, if you start your day on a Mars bar and a can of Coke, you will shoot up your blood sugar. So you get a massive spike, you get all this energy, then your blood sugar crashes because the pancreas secretes insulin, takes sugar out of the bloodstream. Insulin, by the way, it can't magic it away. So it tends to turn it off into fat and it lays it around the center. So people with a high carb, high sugar diet tend to put weight on around the center. But then you crash. And so you dip. So you're tired, you're hungry, then you need a pick me up. And up you go again. Then this will affect your metabolism, your thyroid function, your adrenal function. And a lot of people I see are put on thyroxine because the TSH needs to be at a certain level for IVF. But sometimes it can be supported, your thyroid doesn't need to get out of kilter by balancing your blood sugar levels. It's not just about that. And in order to balance your blood sugar levels, it's very simple. Once you've broken your fast, so breaking your fast is having breakfast. You can break your fast. Some people have to have breakfast the moment they get up. Some people can't bear the thought of eating for at least a couple of hours. It doesn't matter. However, if you have a cup of tea with milk in or a cup of coffee with milk in, that is breaking your fast. Black tea or coffee, although we shouldn't be drinking too much of that, obviously, ladies and gentlemen, but that is okay. So once you've broken your fast, be it when you get up or whatever your breakfast might be, try not to then let more than maybe 4.5 hours. Some people need 3.5 hours without eating. So don't leave a massive gap, and include protein every time you eat. In fact, protein and fat reduces the speed at which carbohydrates enter the bloodstream. Most proteins contain fat just by their very nature. But so this is where also a low-fat diet is not recommended from a fertility perspective, because also the good fats are really important for estrogen and progesterone production, and fat egg quality and sperm quality, of course. So protein every time you eat, and eating on a reasonably regular basis, not all the time. Your body needs time to digest, but that is you're sort of the key to blood sugar control. You feel better for it, your hormones work better, everything works better, and it will help with your egg quality and your sperm quality actually as well. So that to me is the starting point for anybody. Actually, it's not even for fertility. I think for anybody, I think balancing your blood sugar levels is really important, and it's very easy, particularly not to have protein at breakfast.
Okay, thank you. We've just got a quick question on
Sure.
protein. Sorry, Emma, we have been getting lots of questions through, so we're trying to answer as many as we can, but we're making notes of anything at the end to be able to answer. But one question Emma had just asked was whether she can have too much protein during stims or during the 2-week wait. She has low AFC and is having around 130 grams a day. Is that detrimental?
Not necessarily, depending if you're having, a steak every day. If you're having a lot of red meat, it's not ideal, but it depends what your protein is. And if there is any reason that you're having, because it is quite a lot of protein. It's quite hard to get 130 grams of protein in a day, because of course during stims you shouldn't be exercising. So, you need to take that into account as well. So, but if you're having lots of protein shakes, I mean, I would always prefer to get as much as you can from food, of course, but I think during IVF, I do personally think the protein shakes or protein powder has a role, because it is easier to get sort of concentrated protein, but it's is there too much? And by the way, in the 2-week wait, you don't need, once you've had your eggs out, I don't say stop your high protein straight off. I don't think your body would thank you for that. I think you need to phase it out, phase it in and phase it out, basically. But it can drop down. You don't need that much protein afterwards, and you certainly don't need that much protein in pregnancy. So, it's one can have too much, but I guess it sort of depends on how you're having it and what kind of protein you're having it, and what you're doing. We're all different. That's the thing. One size absolutely doesn't fit all. If you feel great on it, I can't see that's a problem, to be fair, unless it's lots of steaks
Okay.
or sausages.
She said it's cottage cheese, pistachios, and 4 eggs. So it's about 115 grams. So it doesn't sound like too many steaks.
Well, 4 eggs I mean, there's only about 6 or 7 grams of protein per egg, maybe 7 or 8 grams of protein. But so 4 eggs will give you 20 something grams of protein. The cottage cheese is reasonably high protein. Nuts and so it's not the weight. There's not the weight of what you're having, because everything has other things rather than just protein in it.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. So on blood sugar balance, someone's just asked if men should also be looking to balance his sugar levels too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think it's for both, really, isn't it? Everything.
Just for general health, and we look, yeah, for testosterone production, absolutely. But just also for mental health, for energy, men are stressed as well, for supporting balancing your blood sugar levels, and particularly having protein. I mean, I would also try and start your day with some protein, particularly good when you're highly stressed, because actually to support adrenal and thyroid function, having protein at breakfast is really great.
Brilliant. Thank you. So yes, so what depletes the body of nutrients?
So the obvious, well, lifestyle, depending on, what a lifestyle is. So, but certainly exercise is recommended. Okay. Moderate exercise, big thumbs up from a fertility perspective. Very high intensity, not so much. Okay. Very high intensity exercise, it increases cortisol levels, it increases inflammation in the body, it can actually suppress reproductive function. So high stress, and of course we can't control our stress. It's a very difficult one, but it's important to put it in, because we all have a certain amount of stress, and people then get stressed about being stressed. And I think it's maybe taking a step back from stress and looking at how to support stress. And we've already talked about one thing, which is managing your blood sugar levels, plus we'll talk a bit later on about certain nutrients that are depleted, with stress. Yeah, sleep, very important. And we all need different amounts of sleep, not everybody needs 8 hours. Some people can thrive on 6, but, if you know that you need more sleep and stuff, it is. But again, when you're going for IVF, it is very targeted. There's a lot involved in it, and it's not just the medication. It's not just going for a scan and having your injections. It's looking at everything else to give you the best chance and to make you feel that you've had the best chance as well. Yeah, so there are various things that deplete. So we look at really supporting the body from a dietary perspective and from a lifestyle perspective as well. And medications, certain medications can deplete. Most medications, not all, but a lot of them can deplete nutrients. So for instance, just as an example, I see a lot of people who are on antidepressants, on SSRIs, and that can deplete CoQ10 being one of them actually, but folate and other B vitamins, magnesium particularly, which is really important, and which is used up when you're stressed. So it's just being aware if you are on medication that it can deplete, and making sure that from a dietary perspective, but also from a supplementational perspective, you are putting back and more what you're taking out.
Okay, great. And someone's just asked here, just linking to the exercise.
Yeah.
Going through the 2-week wait, what is recommended for exercise? They've asked full bed rest or carry on with day to day. I think it's generally, again, it's moderation, isn't it? And
Yeah, I mean, I think you need to certainly be advised by your clinic, but generally, you don't need to go and lie in a bed for 2 weeks by any stretch. I mean, I have known of people who've had embryo transfer and gone straight back to work. I'm not sure that's ideal. It's taking it easy, but for the first couple of days, taking it easy, certainly. Then you can go, but I wouldn't start spring cleaning your house or deciding that you want to climb a mountain or that kind of thing. Walking is fine, but don't suddenly start jogging. I think you want to take it easy. A natural conception takes place in the fallopian tube. So the sperm travels up, goes into the tube, fertilizes the egg, then the embryo is wafted down gently into the uterus. So it's all, done inside. An IVF is very rude. It comes in through a catheter, up it goes, and it gets shoved in, so it has to find a place. Do you know what I mean? It's a little, one needs to be a bit more gentle with oneself because of that, I think.
okay. And someone here has just said if you're on antidepressants, we
No,
suggest stopping.
don't
So
stop. No. I absolutely don't mean that at all. It's just making sure it's absolutely fine. And I'm not a doctor, so obviously I can't talk, but it's more that saying if somebody's on antidepressants, I would say, okay, well, do make sure that you've got good B vitamins in your multivitamin. Definitely take coenzyme Q10. You might also benefit from a bit of extra magnesium. It's just understanding that maybe your body, you just need to, put back some nutrients that might be lacking a little bit. That's all. But don't stop. Please don't stop. Absolutely not.
and then there are just a couple of people who'd asked a similar question, again linking to exercise, about how to balance losing weight safely with nutrients things. That's something we touch on in the diet side further down, but I don't know if you've got any sort of quick.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, and I think again, following a lower carb diet can be really helpful. In the lead up, I mean, it depending on what your lead time is, if you like. If you're doing reasonable exercise, you don't want to stop it dead the day before you start your stimulation, because your body is going, well, what's going on? I'm used to doing X, Y, and Z. So it's probably phasing down your exercise, but you don't have to stop being completely active. And again, it's looking at what you're eating, reducing your carb intake, maybe not going low fat, but having good quality, good fats, not sort of eating 5 jars of peanut butter and stuff like that. So I mean, it's being sensible, and you can link weight loss as well, or at least, unfortunately, a lot of people find that IVF drugs are potentially linked with weight gain. So it is a slight balancing act. But while you're going through IVF, feeding your eggs is probably your most important thing you can do.
Brilliant, thank you. And we're having lots of questions come in, but I think the majority now should be answered, I think, with the rest of
Okay.
is there
All right.
more on the nutrition side, but anything else we will be answering as many as we can at the end as well. So
Okay.
yeah, just in case people think they're not being their turn isn't coming. So yes, anything to improve quality of
Yeah.
eggs.
The answer is, yeah, at this stage, I'm sure, there is no test for egg quality. You can't test for egg quality. So people, it's like, oh, this is not happening, blah, blah, blah. therefore we think egg quality is poor. So at this moment, we can't test for it. However, we can test for sperm quality, and there is a lot of study done on sperm. Plus, we can test rodents. So there's lots of study being done with mice and rat models and things. And eggs and sperm are casings for strands of DNA. So in my opinion, what's good or bad for the gander has got to be good or bad for the goose. You know, in the end, we're looking at DNA. And so if something has been found to benefit sperm quality, we have to assume it will probably have a benefit in egg quality. Plus, if we look at, you know, nutrients and stuff that have improved egg quality in reproductively older mice, then we have to assume and hope that human females will also respond. So the answer is yes, you can. And from my experience, I've seen it only in embryo quality going up. You know, you can't see it in egg quality because you can't see that. But yes, without a shadow of doubt, I have seen embryo quality improved when both parties, you know, put a bit of work in. Yeah, for sure.
And we have had a couple of questions. We get these quite often as well about the difference between frozen embryo transfer on the nutrition side. So and also people asking when you should start looking at taking supplements and changing nutrition. So I know we tend to say at least 3 months if you're able to, but anything is better than
So
that.
yeah, so if you're looking for a fresh, you know, the maturation cycle of an egg and the sperm is roughly 2.5 to 3 months. To be really honest, again, a lot of studies that are done on male fertility, improvements are seen well within that, to be fair. And so, you know, you can see improvements much quicker than 3 months. But in an ideal world, however, if you don't have 3 months, then it's never too late, you know, because also people forget, and I see a lot of people go, oh my God, but I'm starting my cycle next week. It's too late. And it's like, well, no, if you're starting your cycle, what do you mean you're starting your cycle? Are you starting your stimulation or are you starting your down, you know, and you find out actually that you're starting your cycle, egg collection's not going to be for another 4 weeks after that. So, you know, that's 5 weeks we're looking at. So don't look at it from your cycle, look at it from egg and sperm collection, and really, you know, any time is worth it for sure. But in an ideal world, if you have the time, then if you know, a good 3 months would be amazing. And from an embryo transfer perspective, when your embryos are created, look, if you're living on a diet of sausage rolls and whiskey, then probably, you know, your body is not rich in nutrients. If you've been living a reasonably healthy lifestyle and things, I tend to say, you know, look, realistically, you know, the main thing is leading up to it is increasing your antioxidant intake, looking at the environment. And again, we'll talk about this a bit later on with the vaginal microbiome. Ideally, you would look at it maybe a few weeks before. But if people are going, oh, can I still drink coffee and, you know, or have a glass of wine? I would say, yeah, I mean, you know, with a transfer, you can do that later on than with fresh cycle where you have to stop that earlier. So there isn't a set time really. It's dependent on many things. But you do want to try with both of them, but also even with embryo transfer, you want to give it a few weeks if you can of supporting blood flow and reducing inflammation and supporting the vaginal microbiome and all the things that can help maybe hopefully support an implantation.
Great, thank you. So moving on specifically to egg health.
So obviously these aren't the only nutrients that are important for egg health, but these are some of the key ones. So yeah, the egg is the largest single cell in the female body. So the energy, the CoQ10, which we will talk about later, and I know that people have questions about it, has a dual role in helping with the reducing cellular damage, if you like, because CoQ10 is produced in the mitochondria of every cell in the body, including the egg, but it's also an energy provider. So yeah, vitamin D, and a lot of clinics don't test for vitamin D. I think vitamin D is really key for both male and female fertility. There are vitamin D receptors in every reproductive organ, so it's really important for vitamin D. Folate is extremely important for both male and female. You know, so omega-3 we've got there is really important as well for the cell membrane, the creation of the egg, and including the sperm as well, which I think we'll talk about later. But actually, as I said, eggs and sperm are casings for strands of DNA, and DNA requires folate, which requires B12 and B6 to function properly, zinc, selenium, beta carotene, vitamin E, so a lot of nutrients. So a nutrient-rich diet and a good quality multivitamin can be so helpful in this respect. And there is a lot you can do to help reduce cellular damage as well. You can improve the quality of your eggs. I am sure of it.
Thank you. And then sperm health, specifically.
Pretty much the same. And again, we know, for instance, so zinc, I mean, there is, maybe, I mean, the differences with male and female, I mean, essentially the same nutrients are really important. Seminal fluid is very, very rich in zinc, so potentially a man would require more zinc. And we know that increased zinc can improve sperm count, or, morphology as well. We know that increased antioxidant intake improves sperm quality. That is categorical. We know that. There's tons of study done. For females, by the way, they've done studies with the mice and reproductively older mice who are fed antioxidants have improved egg quality. So we know that, and antioxidants are essentially found in brightly coloured fruit and veg, so that the actual pigment contains antioxidants, and we have antioxidant nutrients such as zinc, selenium, vitamin C, vitamin E, those types of things. So they're very easy to get from the diet. And vitamin D as well. We know vitamin D is really important for the DNA fragmentation of sperm. DHA is omega-3, very important for sperm production, that the shape as well as motility, so it's concentrated in the sperm head. So again, and a lot of us don't get enough omega-3 from the diet, so I think it's something that's really important to supplement, but I think we'll talk about the supplements in a bit, won't we?
Yes, yeah, we will do. Thank you. So yes, so the key nutrients for reproductive health, I think we've covered those. And then looking at a 3-month plan of action for IVF. So as we've mentioned before, that's the ideal, if you're able to look at
I mean, I think if people have the time, but I'm also very conscious that people get told they have to be 3 months, and then they go and meet their consultant, and their consultant says, oh right, and they're going, oh well, I'm off to do this and I need to fit it in, and suddenly they've got a cycle that's booked in for less than 3 months time, and then you panic. Don't panic, because as I said before, and I think we've covered that slide really before, haven't we, that realistically any time is good. 3 months ideal, but it doesn't have to be 3 months. And there, as I said, there are a lot of improvements have been found well within the 3-month windows, with sperm, of course, we're talking. So yeah, so the basics, if you like, from an IVF diet would be, reducing. I have to say, I'm not a fan of cutting everything out. I think everybody should have some treats in their life. And so, if whatever it might be, as long as it's not so horrific. But on the whole, anything you're allowed, the aim is probably at least to do 80-20, 80% good, 20% bad, or have a couple of treats a week or whatever. But by cutting everything out, the added stress you have on you, I don't think is beneficial. So the aim would be to minimize poor quality foods, over processed foods rich in trans fats and chemicals and all that kind of thing. Minimize them. Doesn't mean you can never have a takeaway or go out and have a burger or whatever. And basically, but increase exactly the nutrient rich foods. So if you aim for protein and color every time you eat, some kind of protein, which could be, we've discussed the types of protein, the color representing fruit and veg. Always more veg than fruit, because too much fruit you start getting into the high sugar zone again. So really colorful veg. I tend to say try and have something green and leafy every day. Green and leafy, really rich in folate, which we know is really important. And in fact, one of the reasons that the Mediterranean diet is linked with increased pregnancy rates is that there are higher serum levels of folate in the bloodstream when people follow a Mediterranean diet. So we know that those dark green leafy veg and the pulses, beans, lentils and chickpeas are great for folate as well. So I'd say something green and leafy every day from a veg front. Try and have something orange maybe for beta carotene, which is the vegetarian precursor for vitamin A. Vitamin A, as we know, a lot of people get very frightened about vitamin A. They're told by the NHS you can't have vitamin A when you're pregnant. Actually, vitamin A is essential for fetal development, for the immune system, for the eyes. But vitamin A in its sort of what's called the retinol form, which you often get in supplements, and actually some skin creams and something like that, is not recommended in pregnancy. Beta carotene is the vegetarian precursor. Your body will convert it as and when it needs it to vitamin A, so you don't overdose on it. And but it helps. And it's found in orange yellowy foods, carrots, sweet red, red and orange and yellow peppers, sweet potato, butternut squash, that kind of thing. And I tend to say, have something orange every day, have something green and leafy, and then fit in the colors of the rainbow every couple of days if you can. So, so you've got a good rainbow colors, because every different color will bring something different to the table, literally. And nuts and seeds, rich, nutrient-rich foods. You're getting the nutrients in, you can have a bit of naughty on the side. The naughty food is not going to detract from the good food, if you like. We've talked about the Mediterranean style diet, which is just the ethics of the Mediterranean diet, although I am a big fan of good extra virgin olive oil. So if you like it, do use it. It's thought to be great from a fertility perspective. Stress management. The starting point from a nutritional perspective is managing your blood sugar levels. It's eating foods, sort of rich whole grains, magnesium rich foods and things, but also where you can, doing other things. So some people find that meditation is good. Some people find that having a bath, an Epsom salts bath, fantastic. Epsom salts is magnesium sulfate. You absorb the magnesium through your skin. In fact, Epsom salts baths have been proven to lower cortisol levels. And you can even just have an Epsom salts foot bath if you want to. That's a great way, or just taking time out for yourself, reading a book. It doesn't matter, whatever, we all find different things. The only thing I would say, because some people find that very heavy exercise is a stress reliever. This is where there's this negotiation with yourself as to what is moderate, if you like, but what will help you. But anything you can do to help manage the stress, it's going to be there. Just don't sort of be frightened of it, if you like. We'll find ways of managing it. And there are certain supplements you can take. And from a pro-inflammatory perspective, inflammation is a big issue in our modern world. With many modern diseases and conditions are inflammation, linked with inflammation. Stress increases inflammation. So an anti-inflammatory diet is, which actually a Mediterranean diet is. So things that have can lower inflammation. We're back to the fruit and veg. They are anti-inflammatory. Oily fish, omega-3 is really anti-inflammatory. So in fact, nuts and seeds and also olive oil has a role there. Things like turmeric, ginger, there are many things that actually can be helpful, and probiotics actually beneficial. The gut plays a big role in inflammation. So looking at gut health. So if you are prone to IBS or bloating, see if you can not everybody can figure out the foods, but there are certain foods that you might go, actually, that isn't great for me. And increasing fermented foods like kefir, kimchi, sauerkraut, kombucha, things like that, great for gut health, or taking a probiotic, which in turn will have a knock-on effect on reducing inflammation.
Brilliant. Thank you. Someone had asked about inflammation actually, so I think that hopefully covers that. Just a super quick question on here. Just with the mention of baths, someone said they thought they were bad for the vaginal microbiome.
Well, no, a bath itself is. It depends what you put in the bath. If you're just having a bath in Epsom salts, it's what you don't want is lots of chemical products and douches and all that kind of thing. And yeah, you probably don't want to be having a bath 5 times a day, but 3 times a week. It's just water with Epsom salts. It should be fine. I don't think that should be a problem at all. And as far as I'm aware, there is no issue with that. The vaginal microbiome, if it is super important, but there are ways of supporting that really well with probiotics, of course, and which we'll talk about a little bit later on. And I spoke to a lady just a couple of days ago who had a really good success story with taking probiotics to support her vaginal microbiome, which has been brilliant. So antioxidants, which I have mentioned several times, basically free radicals are unstable molecules that have a destructive effect within the body, and their action results in something called oxidative stress. And from a fertility perspective, higher levels of oxidative stress are linked with poorer egg and sperm quality. So the antioxidant is anti the oxidative stress. People go, why are antioxidants good? Because they combat this they reduce oxidative stress. They are anti the oxidative stress, which is also anti-inflammatory, as it happens. So all of these things actually have antioxidant potential, all these things on this slide. But yeah, so antioxidants as I say, there are antioxidant nutrients, but also we think that, for me, the easiest way of thinking about it is colour. So the actual pigment of brightly coloured fruit and veg, which is why you want the rainbow colours. And they will, we know that things like, people talk about, oh, I've been taking resveratrol. Resveratrol is the very dark purple found in grapes, wine, but grapes preferably at this stage, and beetroot and things like that. So the colours, lycopene is the red colour mainly found in tomatoes, very anti-inflammatory. In fact, lycopene's been found to reduce scarring and adhesions in women with endometriosis, for instance, and we know that it improves prostate function, which in turn improves sperm quality. So the colours become significant. It's not just about the minerals and vitamins, it's about the actual pigment as well. And yes, key nutrients for inflammation. I've mentioned omega-3, which from a dietary perspective, most people are too low in omega-3 because your main source of omega-3 is oily fish. If you are vegetarian or vegan, you're not going to have that anyway. But even if you are not, a lot of people don't eat very much oily fish. And then we're told not to eat too much oily fish because our world is polluted. So this is where the supplement comes in. I think an omega-3 supplement can be really important. But all of these nutrients and vitamin A, so magnesium I've discussed as something that a high percentage of the population are low in magnesium. And it is something that I'm talking about a lot more these days. And it is something to be really considered, I think. And there isn't a huge amount of magnesium generally in a multivitamin because it's quite bulky. So that is something that you can use topically, you can use in baths, but you can actually supplement. Vitamin A, I've discussed that as beta carotene, and the vitamin D I also discussed at the beginning, really, really important. And so many of us are low in vitamin D. And at this time of year, so many of us are low in vitamin D. It's so important to keep on top of it, preferably.
Great, thank you. And just quickly before we move on, just someone has asked if you cook the coloured food before eating, is that taking away any of the benefits?
No, and it's good, very good question, actually. So by cooking, so vitamin C, for instance, is destroyed by heating. Okay, so if you let's take a red pepper. A red pepper is really rich in vitamin C. If you have it raw in the salad, fabulous, you're getting the vitamin C. Roast it in the oven, you're probably going to lose some of that vitamin C. So some nutrients are lost. Some, however, are enhanced, and the color, interestingly enough, like lycopene in tomatoes and peppers actually, or beta carotene in peppers, lycopene and beta carotene in fact are both enhanced both by cooking and also in the presence of fat. Some nutrients are fat soluble. So for instance, you get more lycopene from a spoon of ketchup than you would from a fresh tomato. Not that ketchup is your friend, I have to be honest with you. But tomato puree, for instance, in fact, some of the studies done with sperm are done with tomato puree, and I often recommend people spread it on a cracker. It needs a bit of fat, either a few drops of olive oil or a bit of pesto or a bit of hummus or some avocado. But actually but cooking will actually enhance the absorption of some of the nutrients. So in my opinion, your best way of your sort of best food sort of ethos, if you like, to follow is a mixture of raw and cooked. Not just raw and not just cooked, but a mixture of the two, and then you're going to get the best of both worlds.
Brilliant, thank you. So CoQ10, we've had a few questions about that in particular, and I know that's something that you speak about a lot for this.
I do, and I think CoQ10. So CoQ10, everybody creates CoQ10. Every animal, plant, everything. There's CoQ10. It is part of the energy production process right in the heart of the mitochondria, in the heart of the nucleus of a cell, and it is an energy provider. It also turns out to be a potent antioxidant, i.e., it's an antioxidant. It reduces oxidative stress, so it can help reduce cellular damage. Okay. So that's one thing. And as an energy booster, of course, it's so important because, as we've discussed, the egg is the largest single cell in the female body. So for IVF, they have done studies, a lot of clinics, a lot of consultants say, oh yes, take 600 milligrams of coenzyme Q10. So CoQ10, that is essentially what's studied. There are two types of CoQ10. The traditional form of coenzyme Q10, which is ubiquinone, which is in an oxidized form, which needs converting.
There we go.
As if by magic, which needs converting. Okay. And of course, when you convert things, you use up nutrients, but also you tend to lose some of the benefits when you have to convert. As we get older, our own conversion potential becomes less effective. So certainly people over 40, I would tend to say, definitely look at the active form. Ubiquinol is the active form of CoQ10, which is body ready. It's been converted. It doesn't need converting. It, hits the ground running, if you like. It turns out our own sort of production of CoQ10 peaks at something like age 25, which is really depressing to know. But anyway, apparently it does. So as we get older, we could all do with a bit more coenzyme Q10. If we are a bit younger, then having the traditional CoQ10 ubiquinone is fine. Our bodies will convert it quite effectively. But that is milligrams. And one of the reasons, there are two reasons, in my opinion, that CoQ10 improves IVF outcome. One is the antioxidant potential, and the other is the energy. It helps mature more eggs. So that is why. So even if I'm seeing somebody who's in her late 20s, early 30s, when probably egg quality is not even a thing, but I will still recommend coenzyme Q10 during an IVF cycle or in the lead up to, because I think that energy is really, really important. So I hope that answers questions. I mean, the downside is ubiquinol is much more expensive than ubiquinone, to be fair, but you need less of it. That's the thing. So you get people being told by their doctors that they need 600 milligrams, and they think, oh my God, I need 600 milligrams of ubiquinol, which is super expensive. But actually, you don't need so much. You need less because it's more efficient and more effective. So that's a good thing. You can have a smaller amount of ubiquinol, and you can mix the two quite happily as well. I often say, look, go for the ubiquinol because it's really great. It works well. If you want to add some ubiquinone, which might be a bit easier for your pocket, that's fine as well. You can use them both together. It's fine.
Yeah. And someone here just on the age thing, I know you mentioned over 40, you should look to take it, but actually you'd recommend this for anyone on an IVF cycle.
I would recommend for any woman on an IVF cycle to do CoQ10. I would. And as I say, over 40, definitely ubiquinol for sure. For male fertility, yeah, there is a lot of study done. And again, the thing being is if it's going to improve sperm quality, and these studies show count and motility, but actually, well, I mean, I think it's been found to improve sperm DNA fragmentation. So if it does it for the sperm DNA, one has to assume it does it for the egg DNA as well. So I think CoQ10 can be really helpful if there is an issue with the semen analysis, particularly. It's a really useful nutrient. And as I mentioned a bit earlier on, CoQ10 is thought to be depleted by antidepressants. So because we see a lot of people on antidepressants, and as I say, it is just a normal part of our everyday life these days, but it is worth bearing that in mind. And a lot of, it's not just, both men and women. So if a man is taking an antidepressant, it's probably a good idea to get some coenzyme Q10 into the regime, to be fair, as well as a multivitamin.
Brilliant. And then this just for female fertility, and just while we're talking about that, someone's asked about CoQ10 for a frozen embryo transfer. Would that be something that they
Yeah, so CoQ10 is thought it's good for it's thought to improve blood flow, and it has anti-inflammatory properties, and it may enhance the health of the endometrium. So although for it's more linked with the fresh cycle, it has its place for sure. And again, we all need CoQ10, and it turns out that as we get older, we're not so efficient at producing our own CoQ10. So it's quite a useful thing probably to put in. There is no known toxicity with CoQ10, but because there is not enough study done in early pregnancy, it's something that one can't guarantee the safety. So I tend to say, if you are targeting if you've got a targeted approach, i.e. IVF, either a fresh or transfer or a frozen transfer, I would say stop the CoQ10 at transfer. Carry on until transfer, but stop it at transfer. I also realize that a lot of women take CoQ10 when they're trying naturally and they go on to conceive. Just stop it when you find out you're pregnant. As I said, there is actually no known toxicity, but if there's no evidence, we can't give you that evidence.
And how much would you recommend a day for IVF?
So for IVF, the ubiquinol, and the reason that ours is dosed at 200 milligrams a day, 100 milligrams twice daily, is that seems to be the optimal dose. I would tend to sometimes during the IVF cycle add an extra one through just to enhance the the energy. With CoQ10 traditionally, probably for CoQ10, and again it's dependent on age and stuff, but I would maybe certainly up to 600 milligrams, and again in divided doses dose is probably 200 milligrams 3 times a day. I mean, I have seen people on much higher doses than that. I'm not sure that that's particularly necessary. Sometimes less is more, actually. You know, sometimes studies are done with very high doses of things, but do you really need that high dose? Can you get effective results with a much lower dose? The answer is often you can. So it's one of those things that there's one size doesn't fit all.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned earlier about it can be depleted on if you're taking SSRIs.
It can. It's
Would
thought to
you
be.
recommend upping if you are on a
Yeah, I mean, because you've got nothing to lose, except some people are sensitive. Some people find that they can only tolerate so much. So I've had people who feel a bit weird, um, you know, or not so great if they take too much CoQ10, or people who feel wired as well and can't sleep. So obviously, if it's going to have an overstimulatory effect, it's not necessarily beneficial. So you need to pare it back. You know, we all work differently. Some people can tolerate lots of folate, for instance, and some people find too much folate makes them anxious, makes them depressed. So I think there isn't a specific dose. See how you feel your way. The other thing that depletes CoQ10 is statins. So if anybody has been put on statins for high cholesterol, then that is definitely important to take CoQ10 alongside that,
Great, okay.
alongside statins. And I say that because it's not that uncommon for people to be on statins, but it definitely is a good idea. Whether you do IVF or not, whether you're trying for a baby, if you're on statins, I think it's a good idea to be on coenzyme Q10.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. And then just looking at mindset again, we've mentioned these slightly earlier, but just the importance of mindset.
Yeah, I mean, the mind-body connection, I think, is so important. And there is such a degree of stress involved in an IVF cycle that can't be, it comes with the territory. But I think anything you can do to give yourself permission to do certain things, to support yourself from a nutritional perspective or lifestyle, just do what you can. And I've also, and when I use the term mind-body connection in my clinics, I will often, because I see people who try and be perfect. You know, that's it. I'm doing this. I'm spending this money. I've got to be perfect. That is stressful, feeling like that. So you cut everything out. Oh, I'm cutting gluten, dairy, chocolate, fun, everything. I'm cutting it all out of my diet. And I'm not sure that's the way to go. And I remember very clearly a woman who was doing that. And 4 IVFs later, she did get pregnant, actually. And when I saw her, I happened to see her when she was pregnant. And it turns out that before the last IVF, she thought, oh, sod this. I'm going back to having a bit of fun and just being a bit more normal. And guess what? It worked. And I think sometimes the tension you hold in by trying to, you know, we all fall off the wagon. We all do. It doesn't matter. If people had to be perfect, the human race would have died out many years ago. There isn't a blueprint, you know, and people, I've read this and I've got to do that. I think get some basics in, you know, the diet that we spoke about, get some good supplements in and try and live your life a little bit. I know that's easier said than done, but you know, I think it can be quite powerful.
Brilliant, thank you. So then just to look at the female supplements for IVF preparation, a few people have asked about if you have a healthy diet, are supplements still important? And then a couple of people have just asked if there's certain times of day that are better to take supplements as well. So it'd be great to get an overview of those questions.
So if you have a healthy diet, if you're going through IVF, the answer is yes, I'm afraid I do think that supplements are still important. A healthy diet is great, and we should, you know, we're all lovely to do that. What we don't have any control over is we don't know where our food was grown. We don't know if it's been sitting in the back of a supermarket, unless you have your own small holding, I guess. You know, whether it's been sitting in the back of a shop for 3 weeks, you know, whether the soil has been treated or not treated or over intensively farmed, etc., etc. It is well known that our food today is not as nutritious as it was 50 years ago. That is a known fact. So can we get everything we need? I don't know. Plus, not only that, obviously, you know, the moment you walk down the street, your liver's working harder because it's got to detoxify the car fumes. And you walk into a house and they've got a sofa, a lovely new sofa full of chemicals. Do you see what I mean? You know, all of these things, our bodies have to work harder to break all these things down. So, and in order to do that, what does our liver need? It needs B vitamins and antioxidants and this. So we need all these nutrients. So the answer is, I think supplements definitely have a place. For trying to conceive, a basic would be for me, this is just for trying to conceive, a good multivitamin, omega-3, and probably vitamin D in the winter on top of that. That would be your basic. That's your starting point for both male and female. When you're going, and then dependent, obviously, if there are issues. So when we haven't necessarily discussed that here, I know we've discussed it in the past, Sophie, but you know, in endometriosis and PCOS come with a sort of a set of potential issues of maybe some nutrients are lacking, etc. But if you're going through IVF, then I would certainly add in coenzyme Q10, the ubiquinol, as we've talked about. If you are a little bit older, then potentially an antioxidant complex. So I'm just looking at the picture here, the VitaFem Boost would be that. We have NAC, which is N-acetylcysteine, which is a potent antioxidant. We know actually that improves sperm DNA fragmentation, just for interest. So would it do it in the egg? I think it's great. It's very good for many benefits. It's also great for the vaginal microbiome, and it has been studied with recurrent miscarriage. It's also something I recommend, particularly for women who've got endometriosis and PCOS, but it's relevant for many of us. So there are many nutrients that can be beneficial. And if you are putting everything for IVF, don't forget that your nutrient requirements are higher with IVF because you're ovulating with several eggs. And all of those eggs contain strands of DNA that need all these nutrients. So there's only so much you can eat. So I do think for an IVF cycle, it probably is a really good idea to supplement properly. You don't have to, over supplement, and sometimes less is more, but certainly getting some key ones in.
Okay, great. And just with some people look at this and it looks like a lot. So how
Yes.
do you recommend taking? Do you recommend slowly building up?
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Because if you take everything all at once, your body's going, oh my God, what the hell are you doing to me? And sometimes you start detoxing a bit as well, which can make you feel worse. If your body starts suddenly detoxing a bit, you can get headaches, you can feel a bit it's not great. And some people also find that they don't get on with everything. I mean, we are all different. It is impossible to know. And I have to say, I try pretty much. I will try as far as I can. I will have tried most of the nutrients I recommend just to see. I don't think I'm particularly sensitive, so I'm generally okay. But I know people who are really sensitive and can't tolerate, as I said, the CoQ10. Some people can't. Some people can't tolerate too much folate. NAC, some people find can aggravate them. So it's very, in my opinion, be slow. Start slow. Start with a multivitamin and omega-3 maybe for couple of days. How are you doing? Is that okay? Maybe add the next one in. Do you see what I mean? Do it a bit slowly, because then if you do it all at once and you don't feel great, then people often say to me, what do I do? I say, stop everything and we go back to the drawing board again. So you're going to stop everything and bring it in slowly. So bring it in slowly from the beginning.
Okay, brilliant. And would you recommend taking with food? I know a few of the supplements are multiple times a day, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, if in an ideal world, if something has been recommended that it's 2 a day, it might be best to take it in divided doses if you can. If you've forgotten and you come home in the evening, you go, oh, I'm taking my multivitamin, I need my folate. It's fine taking both, by the way. But if you can take it in divided doses, most things are recommended to be taken with food. Actually, the NAC, and also we have another one called alpha lipoic acid, which is an antioxidant. Those are amino acids that can be taken away from food. But most things are best absorbed with food because your body will start, it starts the digestion process when you're eating it. It produces digestive enzymes, so it can break the food down. And things like, for instance, omega-3 is a fat. If you're having, or vitamin D as well, if you're eating food which got some fat in, you're going to break it down more efficiently. Do you see what I mean? So I think where you can have it, and very simply, some people feel sick if they take supplements on an empty stomach. So I think just, if you can, it would be better to, and if you can, it would be better to do it in divided doses. With a ubiquinol, as an example, your body can process so much at a time, so you might get superior a reaction, absorption or whatever by taking it twice a day than taking it all at once. So there isn't a blueprint for this either, but where you can try and, because there are a lot of supplements, it's true. Again, with the supplements, a multivitamin is designed to be taken on a daily basis. There are certain things, I would say if you're not used to taking supplements and you can tolerate them, take them, take them sort of daily. But then if you've taken things for a while, you can play around with it. If you're finding that things are too many, you can take X on a Monday and Y on a Tuesday and so on. And, you don't, there isn't a law that you have to take everything every day.
Okay, thank you. And just there's a link just in the chat with to this pack. This is the ultimate female IVF support pack. So this essentially contains every single thing.
Pretty much. I mean, that is pretty comprehensive,
Yeah.
and it's great. Does everybody need to have that? Probably not. There is also, I think, a more basic IVF pack, isn't it? Which I think which does contain the CoQ10, but.
Yes, so if on zitawest.com there's lots of different packs, there's lots of different advice, so you can also go away and have a look at some of the things that are recommended there as well. And there's also a link where you can book a free 15-minute consultation with one of our nutritionists, including Isabelle. So if you've got any questions about these, we realize it's a lot to take in. And then the next one is the male supplements for IVF preparation as well.
So again, with the male, I mean, obviously, if a semen analysis looks great, there's no issue. What a semen analysis doesn't tell you is the quality. It'll tell you what it looks like, where it's swimming, how fast, which direction it's going in, all of that. So if there are no issues with that, and the diet is pretty good, etc., then for me, the basic, a multivitamin and omega-3, and again, the vitamin D during the winter. But if there are, maybe the man is a little bit older, because male fertility does decline as well, and there is a higher risk of chromosomal abnormality for both male and female as we get older. So that if there is an issue potentially with motility or count, morphology, which is the shape, any of these things, there are some really helpful things that you can do. So we have the Vitamin Boost, which is an additional antioxidant complex, which has additional vitamin C and zinc and selenium and sort of basic sort of NAC, some basic some antioxidants. And I think recently we've just brought out VitaSeed Pro, which is oh, there you go. And that would be more super duper, which would be suitable alongside the vitamin or not all. The vitamin is the general multivitamin, which contains your folate, which contains the zinc, which is a multivitamin, and folate is as important for the man as the woman. So it's really important. So that would be your basic. But you could add then either the Vitamin Boost or the VitaSeed Pro, or both. They would both, and they both are specifically designed to support count, motility, morphology, and DNA as well. And I know we're going to talk about the probiotics in a bit, and that is really important from a DNA perspective too.
Yes. So yes, exactly.
Oh,
so
hello.
They are. We have had a couple of questions on probiotics in particular as well. So it'd be great just to hear a bit about this, how it can support. Someone has said they've got around 3 weeks until frozen transfer. Is it too late to start the vaginal microbiome?
No, absolutely not too late. In fact, interestingly enough, the FemSieve is studied on a 34-day cycle. There's 34 capsules in a pot, and it is recommended you start it about 3 weeks before transfer and then continue it for another 2 weeks after transfer, hence the 34. So it's not too late, absolutely not. It's perfectly safe in pregnancy. So the results, there's some really interesting study with the organisms that are in the FemSieve. Really good benefits after 5 weeks, which is one pot. Even better after 10. So if you started, if you are at all prone, or if you've been taking antibiotics in the past, or you're prone to any UTIs or thrush or any infection, or you've had HPV or BV or anything like that, I would recommend then you do another pot. Ideally, the 10 weeks would be great. And that can be done even if you have a confirmed pregnancy, because the vaginal microbiome remains important during the pregnancy. And if it is very impaired, there is a risk of miscarriage. So it absolutely isn't too late.
Okay, brilliant. So so these are some of the key nutrients for the vaginal microbiome.
Yeah. So we've talked about most of them
Yeah.
previously, but then
And
we're going to talk about a probiotic, I think.
yes,
Um,
yes. I think you covered these as well about the importance
Yeah,
of.
essentially, the vaginal microbiome has slightly differing species to the gut microbiome. The lactobacillus, there are certain lactobacillus species which proliferate and predominate there, and ideally, and it can reduce infection. It helps the sperm get up, actually, but it also helps sustain a pregnancy. It improves the chances of implantation. It can reduce inflammation. So, for instance, there is thought to be a link with impaired microbiome with people with endometriosis and PCOS as well. So it's something that's been having a lot of study, has had and is ongoing a lot of study at the moment. And your first challenge is getting a good quality embryo, but that's not the end of the story. You want the environment to be good, and I tend to recommend for anybody, whether they've got symptoms or not, because I have certainly seen women who are symptomless, who've had quite a detailed vaginal microbiome test to find that all sorts of things are not right. So, anything you can do to support it, I think, is a good idea. And as I said, the NAC works well alongside it to support the health of the vaginal microbiome. And the gut microbiome and the vaginal microbiome talk to each other as well. So if the gut microbiome is impaired, it may not be, it may be it's a consideration that the vaginal microbiome isn't doing as well as well too.
Okay, brilliant. And this is our we have male and female probiotics. So this is our FemSieve. Someone has just asked about where to get a microbiome test. I think you've said before that.
There's a company called In Vivo. I mean, with some of them you do need to be referred to be fair. There's something called Screen Me as well. Um, I mean, as a very, very basic, you can go and get a pH test in Boots, I think, and it tests the pH, which should be more acidic. And if it's alkaline, if it's over 4.5, that would probably indicate that your microbiome is not looking very healthy. It's not, it doesn't give you any more than that, but it's a start. But yeah, these tests are available. You have to go through a lab. They're quite complicated, to be fair, and generally you need to be recommended by your nutritionist or your clinician.
Brilliant, thank you. So yeah, so this is our FemSieve supplement, which I know you've mentioned. And we also have the MenSieve as well. So for the male side.
Yeah, and the male one is really interesting. So it's a 21-day course. So it's 3 weeks, 21 in a pot, and it's designed to be taken for 3 weeks and then maybe have a week off, and then you could do another 3 weeks. But actually, the results, even after 3 weeks, 6 times more motility and DNA, improvements in the DNA. And that's what's really interesting. And so again, it's something, it's results that last for several weeks. So you don't need to be taking this forever and a day, even just, I tend to recommend more, always at least 2 pots worth of anything, ideally, because it does tend to build up. But, again, can be really helpful. It's very anti-inflammatory as well. Yeah.
Someone did ask actually when you've said about 2 pots, should you continue after if you can? Do you need to continue, or is
I
it
mean, what I would tend to say is it really depends, but often after 2 pots, what you could do is then go, well, instead of then stopping, completely, you go, well, I'm then might take it 3 times a week or something like that. I mean, the results, theoretically, it depends on what your microbiome looked like in the first place. And so if it was very, very low, some people, I've known people who've had 0%, beneficial bacteria, and then you build it up. The aim is to have over 90%. That would be your absolute aim. That might take 3 months, actually. We're all different. It's one of those things that it's very difficult to know. But certainly sometimes a month maybe not enough, and 2 months might be better. And I read a very interesting study this year, well, last year now actually, whereby they looked at the organisms in the FemSieve, and really good result after 5 weeks, even better, and over 90% after 10 weeks, you see, which is 2 pots. But then after that, if you stop it dead, are you going to go backwards? So it might be worth but it means that you don't have to do it. You don't have to, like I said before, to keep things topped up, you don't have to necessarily do it every day.
okay? Brilliant, thank you. And then just looking at embryo transfer preparation. just someone had also, a couple of people had asked about acupuncture before, so that sort of links nicely in with the blood flow section here.
Yeah,
About
so obviously I'm not an acupuncturist, but acupuncture is wonderful for many, many things, blood flow included. And blood flow, see, the better the blood flow to the uterus and the ovaries, the better the nutrient flow as well. So and blood flow, there are certain things that can enhance blood flow. Ginger, chilies, actually, beetroot juice, pomegranate juice often used. In making sure your iron levels are good, because obviously iron is carried around in the blood. If you are anemic or low in iron, that can inhibit blood flow. You know, there are some people who find that they've got very poor circulation, so it's worth working on that. You know, acupuncture can be really helpful with that, or exercise, various things. So blood flow, again, important. Inflammation, again, we've discussed, and reducing inflammation. So pro-inflammatory foods include sugar, processed foods, artificial sweeteners, high fat, high saturated fat like red meat, and high fat dairy. Dairy is a bit of a, you know, that's a whole different story, actually, dairy. But actually, on the whole, dairy, if you can tolerate dairy, it can actually have anti-inflammatory properties. If you are slightly intolerant, it will then give rise to pro-inflammatory reactions. So it's very different with different people.
okay, great. Just talking quickly on the sugar side, a couple of people had asked about Pepsi Max and caffeine. How bad are these for fertility?
Well, okay, so studies are done with sperm, of course, because it's impossible to tell with a woman, really. But they've done studies with soft drinks, you know, like Coke and Pepsi and sperm. Not great, by the way. But also with caffeine, both male and female preconceptual caffeine consumption is potentially linked with miscarriage. And it can damage reproductive cells without it necessarily showing up. It doesn't necessarily show up on a semen analysis. So I mean, we all know people who mainline tea or drink 5 coffees a day and pop out children. But I have also personally in my clinic seen a really amazing result with the man cutting down his coffee uh, and having had miscarriages in the past, etc. So I think that it's important for both of you. Again, I said earlier on, do you have to cut everything out? Not necessarily, but be very, very moderate. I tend to say with coffee, no more than 1 coffee a day, 1 caffeinated coffee. If you want to have another coffee, naturally decaffeinated would be fine.
Okay, thank you.
And Pepsi Max, again, that kind of thing. It's got the caffeine in. It's also got, if it's low sugar, it's got artificial sweeteners. If it's high sugar, it's just got tons and tons of sugar. Plus, fizzy drinks like that contain phosphoric acid, which make your body very acidic, which is not ideal, actually.
Thank you. So hopefully that answers there. 2-week wait. I know we've covered this slightly earlier as well, but anything in particular, do you need to adjust supplements?
Yeah, the supplements, obviously, anything that you wouldn't take in a pregnancy, you wouldn't take in the 2-week wait. So if you're taking an antioxidant complex, for instance, sometimes they're not recommended in pregnancy. I would stop, you know, if that's specifically for egg quality, I would probably stop that. The coenzyme Q10, just because it's not been studied in pregnancy. Certain herbs and things which may not be recommended in pregnancy, it's best to stop. From a food perspective, you can reduce your, if you are going for a fresh transfer and you've been eating a lot of protein, you can reduce your protein intake. You don't need that high protein anymore. If you're going for a frozen transfer, you won't have been shoving in the protein anyway, probably. And obviously it's eating foods that are safe in pregnancy. So you probably wouldn't want to go on a brie fest or, you know, eat a load of blue cheese. I mean, it's avoiding the foods that are not safe in pregnancy. So soft unpasteurized cheeses, raw meat and fish, that kind of thing. Otherwise, it's being normal. There isn't anything specific. Focusing on blood flow still, being calm, keeping inflammation down, keeping the antioxidants in.
Brilliant. And someone's just said Vitafem in the 2-week wait and inositol for a frozen embryo transfer. That's okay. You tend to say to stick to the supplements, don't you?
I would tell, yeah, inositol is actually has been studied in pregnancy. In fact, it is perfectly safe in pregnancy. And in fact, it may help reduce the risk of gestational diabetes down the line if that is an issue with somebody. Is it necessary? Not particularly, but it's perfectly safe. Yes, Vitafem, I tend to say, yeah, carry on with your Vitafem. And if you find out you're pregnant and you've still got 2 weeks worth of Vitafem left, finish it. Don't waste it, and then move on to the pregnancy one. It's absolutely fine.
Brilliant, thank you. And also, just about implantation, is there
Mm.
anything that hadn't been discussed? So is there anything, any supplements in particular for implantation?
Well, again, I mean, it's a good multivitamin. So folate, so the nutrients that are really important for implantation: folate, selenium, vitamin E, beta carotene, and vitamin D, really important. So generally, a diet, an increased antioxidant, so a diet higher in fruit and veg improves the uterine environment. Whole grains, actually, it's thought to have a diet higher in whole grains is thought to improve implantation. NAC, I particularly if somebody has had any miscarriages and stuff, I would often say keep on with the NAC, because NAC has actually been studied with recurrent miscarriage. It's perfectly safe in pregnancy, and don't stop it. It's anti-inflammatory and it's an antioxidant. But certainly, so a good multivitamin, potentially NAC, definitely omega-3, vitamin D, to help. And often I recommend magnesium because a lot of us are stressed. Magnesium is very quickly used up when you're stressed. Magnesium is great for blood flow, actually. From an egg quality perspective, it's good for the DNA of the egg. In fact, it's good for hormone balance, blood sugar control, but it may help with implantation as well. And magnesium requirements are raised in pregnancy. So that is something that, if people feel, and a lot of people say, well, if I take magnesium, I sleep better. Great, take it then, because that's going to be good. Or they feel a bit calmer. Anything that has a positive reaction, take it. As long as
Brilliant.
it's safe. It is safe, by the way. Yeah.
Thank you. And just on the magnesium one, there is a Zeta West magnesium supplement, isn't there? So again, if you
Yeah, it's really nice one. So it's a marine magnesium, which is naturally derived from the Irish Sea, from mineral salts from the Irish Sea. So it's very rich in minerals, which help optimize the absorption. Yeah, so it's nicely absorbed. There's all sorts of different types of magnesium out there. So different people favor different things, but you want a highly absorbable one. I wouldn't go on to a supermarket counter and just get one, because the magnesium will probably, the sort of more generic would be magnesium oxide, which is not well absorbed generally. So you want to have either a marine magnesium, which is a mineral rich magnesium, or a citrate or a glycinate or something like that.
Great, thank you. And a question on folate and folic acid. Do you need to take folate if your multivitamin has folic acid?
No. Okay, so folic acid is synthetic and folate is the natural active form. So there is a percentage of the population, most of us don't know because it's not something that is tested, unless really you're going through an IVF cycle, actually, and even then, not often. But there is a genetic variant whereby some people have a higher requirement for folate, and their bodies don't process folic acid very well. So I personally always a fan of folate. I prefer folate to folic acid, and so I tend to recommend supplements with folic acid in. Or folate, sorry. Now I've got myself confused. The other thing is that we are very conservative in the UK. The recommended dose of folate is 400, or folic acid is 400 micrograms. Automatically in the US, by the way, it's 800. So a lot of people do need more, actually, because a lot of modern diets are folate poor. So the answer to that question is you don't have to, but it would be perfectly safe. And if you've got folic acid anyway, adding extra folate may be a good idea, because at least you're having it in its active form.
Okay, great, thank you. There is a question someone has asked. I'm not sure if this is something you'd be able to answer about using a red light therapy device to use on the ovaries. Reading that it's got better results in the morning.
No, I'm really sorry. That's
I know,
I
yeah,
can't answer that question.
repeated the question, but it's just about nutrition. So we've got, as you can see here, you can scan to book a free product recommendation with our nutritionist. We've had so many questions tonight. We've tried to answer as many as we possibly can. Any that we didn't answer, we would have been answered by Isabelle at some point within the presentation, which is why we may not have answered it straight away. And there might have been a few in there that possibly need a bit more information, or we have just tried to answer as many people's questions as possible, really. So if you feel that any of yours have been answered, then if you scan the QR code, you can book a consultation, or you can also email our customer service email address. And if you head over to zitawest.com as well, there's lots and lots of information on there. You can have a look through all the products. We've got lots of packs that you can do, which make it a bit easier to see what you might need. And as we've mentioned as well, this will also be sent out to everyone, so you're able to have a look through in your own time, and perhaps email any questions that you might have afterwards. So thank you so much, Isabelle. You were absolutely fab as always.
Welcome. You're welcome. Sorry, I hope we managed to answer. It's so difficult when there's all this stuff. But anyway, as Sophie said, if there's anything you need, please don't worry about emailing it. I will try and answer if I can.
Yes, and it will, yeah, Isabelle's there as well. And if you go online, you can sign up to a newsletter where there's lots of information. You'll be reminded when there's other webinars. If you don't follow already on Instagram, we quite often do short little Q&As on there. So there's plenty of ways to get hold of us if you don't feel that you're answered today. But yes, thank you. And Laura, yeah, that's exactly it. 2025 is the year to go. So thank you, Isabelle. And
you're welcome.
thank you everyone for joining and for all your amazing questions. It makes it go a lot quicker for us as well, getting through everything, doesn't it? So yeah, thank you very much.
Bye, everybody. Good luck to everybody. I know what it's
Huge
like.
luck to everyone. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.